and hand over to you, Rustum. If you'd like to introduce yourself, you're welcome to. If you want to just get into reading, that's also perfect.
I think I'll just go ahead and read. I mean, you did have a biography on the group email you sent around. I just want to point out to people that, you know, if you've been at any of the previous reading, if you've been at the off the wall reading, I mean, you know, I don't have a lot of brand spanking new poetry. I have some poetry that hasn't officially been published, but it's been put up on my blog, and some of them are a little bit old, but I hope that you will enjoy the reading in any case. And as per usual, I also normally start a reading by reading a poem by another poet, and I always joke that it's my way of paying temple taxes. And this evening I thought I'd start off with reading a poem by Calvin Soul, who was a teacher of mine, was a supervisor for my master's degree, and is one of my favorite poets. And I'm going to read a poem from his 1987 debut collection, The Blood of Our Silence. The poem is called My Countrymen. As our treacherous land spins now away from the sun, and a carpet of stars descends on the cold floor of winter, we separately yawn, brush our teeth with a defense budget, go to bed without each other. The Magopa patriarch flung at Pachsdraai, a clod of crumbled soil. The cleaner who'll climb the skyscraper night now cooks her husband's supper, already sick with tiredness. And old and powerful men sucking their thumbs in sleep, one hand curled round the cuddlesome security of the Nkumati Accord, faces blissful, and the rest of us, the many lessons we haven't learned, the courageous stands we never took, the synapse between pain and knowledge of ourselves, our nerve ends bathed in acetylcholine and history, where fate plays roulette with our skin, but we daren't call it Russian. My countrymen, of the homespun hopeful visions we wear as underwear this season, our night has come again. Calvin Soul. The next poem I'd like to read is my attempt at translating an N.P. van Wyk poem. The poem is called Karoo Town Summer Evening, Karoo Dorp Someraand. The late afternoon, thick like cream, and trains that whistle far away, and a pied wheat ear like a sentinel on a clod, and smoke from the township smokes, and at the town's damn song, and people in tenor short stroll into the copper dusk. Far on the national road, small cars run at pitch, inaudible. Old A.B. Abattoir's old bike comes to rest at the bar by itself, tired. Aunt Anna with a canker sit on the boarding house stoop. Tonight still we will go and hear her, how she calls out to the Lord and to the owls. The next three poems I call my observatory cycle because they set in observatory, and some of you may recognize some of the venues at which they are set, or maybe not. The first one is called simply Observatory Winter. Sunday astounds with its warm sun, and the silent streets at midday empty of residents, now in quiet mastication around tables in dim rooms, or those fortunate out in gardens. Somewhere, someone unrolls a prayer rug. Somewhere also, two lovers maybe rise finally from their tender bed. He to throw out the condom, she to dress and then startle herself into humming a song, which draws him back to where she stands hungry and burnished now, before opened curtains in their room shot through with light. I come to warm myself over coffee in the sun, to stare at cars tilting into gutters, the last ungentrified shop fronts peeling in the warm, estranging light, as if in photographs from elsewhere, postcards yet which beg no romance. The vendor patient with his pirate discs, the homeless with nothing but curses for the immigrant. Your masa quere quere poes, boomeranging back in Nigerian brogue, or is it some French Creole? Ah, footcheck your whatnot. Some days, it's all such a conjugation of comedy, a common ingenuity in retooling curses, and some days all of it makes you flinch, that the human, for all its love, for all its desire of the other and the sun, for all its exhaustion at the world caught in tragic impasse, can learn to curse first in a recoil of the wintering heart. But for now, it's quiet, a blessing like drowning, lost in a stare and the cooling coffee, the drift far away of hymns in the same French, the faint stab and pierce somewhere as a trumpet starts on its scales, waking you to the dog at your knee, its black pelt glossed by sunlight, the owner's soft apology, and the dutiful dog's warm back passing under your instinctive pat. I don't know if anybody who may have lived in observatory at the turn of the century, whether you know of anybody who had a black Labrador, because that is a real dog. It's not a metaphorical dog, in other words. The next poem, also set in observatory, is called simply Fog. 4 a.m. Streets under fog, streetlights out, except two down the road, and the moon's halo easily obscured by a plume of breath laced with nicotine and the meager consolation of the last round from the last open bar now closed, its glow also gone. From the bay, a foghorn, a long, low note from watcher's end, as if a moan of solitude from Leviathan cast down into despair by its guard. From a doorway, a cry in counterpoint, a homeless man swaddled in his nightmares, the abject of the rich man's dreams. Not one lone car carrying young lovers, drunk and eager, warm between their legs and their hope, their cold, misfiring hope that after the revving and keening, after the splutter home and the many beers souring the breath, that tonight's love will remain. There is no God now as lonely as these streets, this grid empty like love's chessboard at game's end, or a labyrinth through which comes a beast comes loping a dog, its coat matte with condensation. And behind it from the mist emerges a man on a walk at tangent to the world and time. The dog loops back to him to brush at his legs, sniff at his feet, then heels like a dutiful companion at a soft chide, at a soft ghost of a chide. Back into the fog they fade, past the last lights down the road, a man and his black dog. My last observatory poem as such is called Grondwerk. And, you know, it was one night in Cafe Ganesh. I got drunk. That's how the poem started. Grondwerk. Drunk on wine and rum, neighborhood trilling with youth and lights. The words that come to me now, like a long lost lover I can believe I had, or even want to have had. Granaatboom in an aunt's backyard, behind the pigeon coop in the big yard that holds the Hanslum. Mischievous 8-year-old twins smoking Wilde Dacha. And from the kitchen, gemmer, anise, kaneel. And dennebal of summer, dennerpytjie. And when dry, how the cones knitter in a brazier, gallyblik, brazier of my youth on a street corner or next to a building site in the dead of winter of a dark decade. My bra, my brother, Kazilam, friends now gone, God knows where, in alcohol, in debt, in silent life, perhaps now closer to God. And always for light relief, the tragic comic in a play or in a colorful ad, never, weinig, liefkoos, verlang, verdriet, oor koud die windjie, skraal. Always caricature, but never when heard from my mouth, its ordinary sadness, triestig, kleurloos, like a day-long rainfall day, moordkuil van my hart. Whew. I want to read the next poem for Jacques, because Jacques said that he liked a poem about me wanting to play Mingus for my father, but unfortunately I don't have a printout of that particular Mingus poem at hand, but I will read Mingus Octopus from the Skating Life. Mingus Octopus. Oprah's on TV fucking crying again, crying at all those gentle folk who change others' lives through acts of gentleness. And so they get their letters, maybe themselves, in the nation's eye. A phenomenon I've often noticed, like finches, or feral pigeons in Cape Town's company gardens. Meanwhile, Mingus is going absolutely apeshit in my bedroom, moaning, oh Lord, moaning about the Ku Klux Klan. They something this, something that, they brainwash and teach you hate. And he's not Miles. No, Miles isn't Mingus. Doesn't quite get there, you know, up there, hauling that big black bass out as if it's the heart of it all. Mingus, thou pluckest me out, changing your motherfucking chords like God, furious at creation, not knowing what or where, switching firmament, light, land, or how, and himself the Lord in it. Oh, he is in it like the darkness on the face of the sea. Yeah, what do they know of this juncture? Mingus, my heart. And when I walk into the room, there you are, big fucking octopus, soft-headed, squashed in that corner. But you got me. Can you get this? Me, sagging in your arms like a pale Victorian heroine, frightened at your thud of bass, your 80,000 tentacles all around me like I'm the bass you play. Me, you play me, and I let you. I let you. The next poem I'd like to read is called That River, and it's dedicated to an old classmate of mine from high school, Sean Africa. We were in the same class for many years, and he was a student activist as well. And about, I think in 2007 or 2008, he took his own life. Sean Africa. That river, that river. Then there's one moment I'm doing everything. dusting books, shelving them, brewing coffee, on the stereo, Bob Marley, slow and sad. Johnny was a good man. Wrong. Another moment, and melancholia is my name. And I'm floating down a river, down that river, down that river, drifting through a pile of chapbooks, then regret, regret. I tell you, regret is my name, and desolate my hearts. A funeral program, the photograph of an old friend, his hint of a jowl like mine too now in age. I look for him now down that river, paging the thin program. The pallbearers' names ring in long friendship from home into the church, out of the church. Names who are still here to bear you and me through the estranging decades. But then there are only pages of him, thin, inconsequential hymns in new, awkward poetry or no poetry. Yea, though I walk through death's dark veil. What kind of God will respond to his own absence in the mirror we hold to him when God himself is inconsequential? As this funeral program now is, with its inconsequential notes scribbled in my own inconsequential hand, thunder rolling over the Boerland, and whispers over her school children, or no, it was from a friend. Juffrou is ook hier. Juffrou is ook hier. 5 syllables and a life of consequence, full of chalkboards and class registers, the dedicated Juffrou who worries about the children, all the children, and the slowest among them, whether they've eaten, whether there's trouble at home and in your heart again. Juffrou is ook hier. In that moment comes a life more full than any poetry or the prose of the anthropologist. A poetry of consequence more than any God's ken, and which is solace to all my names. A raft down that river, that river, that river. Who knows how strong that river, Sean, that river that took you in. Meneer Africa, of solace and consequence to the school children who knew your care and who now stand by the river, thunder rolling in over the Boerland, rain over the warm earth, and up in the mountains, more water over rock, more rivers gathering strength. The next poem is called Mnemosyne. Comes through the bright green leaves of the row of oak trees in late November, the whitewashed wall of the school. The matric exam done, we've come to return our textbooks and now stand in the shade under the big oak by the school hall to say farewell to a favorite teacher who looks on us with a care some always had, our teachers, but that we recognize always only too late. In memory, when we're looking elsewhere for something else, like now, when I look elsewhere for something else, you come to me unbidden under that tree, Mnemosyne in a short white dress with small red flowers, or are they strawberries? Your bare brown arms, your athlete's calves firm in tan sandal straps, your eyes also brown, your hair brown, nut brown hair that will brush across my face, and all the stories before and after of how it begins or ends, its tracery fine as the veins on a bright green leaf in a Boerland summer, before we turn to the world. You to study music, me to fail mathematics and turn to the algorithms of heartbreak and study its poetry instead, its failed theorems, which, when one looks, lead back to this Solven scene, where you were the first woman I loved. Though I still don't know what it means, I loved you deeply in all its infinite innocence. Deep enough it hurt me into poetry, like a country would, like a country does. Into the poetry that brings me back to the barbs and pull of memory. Who cares now that these lines are sentimental, when it's not done to sing of love in youth, to apostrophize some big romantic absence, to be instead self-aware of the sin of emotion. But here they are, lines I wish I could have written when I was another, lines other than those cribbed from pop songs and embroidered hangings before I studied heartbreak. It's no more done that men should cry thus in public, or anyone should talk of hurt unfixed by chemicals or by money to buy things. But here it is, that cut below the heart, the one that never heals, the one we won't admit for fear of seeming weak, but also to guard its privacy. The hurt we wish forgotten, that hurt lasts, and lasts as long as a word like slave survives. Look at us, still hurt here, or into a scatter of lone rituals buying up redemption in malls across the world. A public hurt, apartheid hurt us somewhere outside history, beyond statistics or the careful prose of glossed reports, hurt us beyond the wheel of reparations, a pittance from some pig-fat overlording bureaucrat, or the cheap spectacles of sport and reconciliation. It only multiplies, I now declare, private heart, because our hurt is still our sin, and wished forgotten like a date of battle or some other minor detail ill-chosen, a part of speech beyond our passing, and so we carry on hurting. Christmas Eve. Almost all is the Mozart fugue that fails its promise of deliberate consolation, the unending ticker and swish of a sprinkler outside, and the roads angry with traffic in last-minute errands as the year breaks again into its manifold terrors. Christmas Eve and its solitudes for the holy and the damned, and the thin disguise the lonely wear as if shirked by God, or shirked by friends to gods in small towns where the earth's bounty lies. Jungle, waterfall, placid lake. But the earth is weary. The thin earth will admit it's lonely, as it makes the jagged cliff, the arid plain, its bare spaces where some still go. The love of men. I love men too for their bodies, could love them hard and gentle, and would have them love me back in all love short of the fuck. Even as I love taut buttocks, or a spine reaching between broad shoulder blades for the head, wrist bones, the curve beneath the pectoral, the ligaments of the groin. A firm handshake, sometimes even a palm to my face, a touch on the arm or leg, or the hand hooked behind the neck, drawing in the warm embrace. It's no adventure, no experiment, but the body's lyrical gift. If you know when to look and how, you would love it too. How are we doing for time? Okay. It's okay if I read for 10 or 15 more minutes. Is that good?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. The next poem is called October Java. And just a brief, the context, the shadow behind the poem is the massacre of communists in Indonesia in 1965. And I use the phrase the killing fields, and I'm fully aware that the killing fields refer to the massacres in the 70s in Cambodia by the Khmer Rouge. So just to clear that up, I mean, I'm using killing fields as a generic, even though it has a very specific reference to Cambodia. October, Java. The buzz of scooters died down past the bamboo compound revamped for tourists tramping to and from an ancient temple. Fresh and flushed by showers, couples compare their pics and laugh and muse at what they can only describe as the riches of the land. The rice, the strange fruit, the smiling waiters, and the call to evening prayer hardly heard above the rain, rushing from the eaves and gutters, roaring in the ears and in the head. The rain stops as it started, a sudden moment's hush, then the click of knives on bone and plate, and the global benefits of American, English, Dutch. Under the grinning moon, the river runs by silently, runs mercurial by bridge and bamboo, by crabs sidling like henchmen past the tourist stream through the sleep of history. The foreigners will cluck and leave with bolts of batik and temple curios wrapped like careful metaphors for their inner peace bought with pound and euro, bought with murderous dollars. Only the sun tomorrow will cast its eye on river rock brown like fingers clawing at the shore, on a tree stump stuck midstream like a torso shorn of limbs, streaking red, its banners long washed out to sea. Only the sun will raise its weary eye on the gecko fled from the burning walls, its tail left twisting in testimony, on gods in flames, their ashes falling on the killing fields. The wind in the morning. For the children of Gaza. The man wakes from dream to nightmare, his night-aged knees buckling over rubble outside when he emerges from the black mouth of his house. Its burnt shell, a meager shelter from the wind, now tugging at the loose something and the blight it brings like a scythe through the valleys. Let the sun rise if it must. Let it burn through the wind. Let it dry them eventual white and broken as the earth. His neighbors, the two lovers, charred in copulation on the blackened bed, as if they unleashed the starbursts of the bombs, that burning of their love. What's left are the wind-worn harvests, the neighbors' ache, friends' unanswered calls, a mother who cries, who wanders until death among the millions of the unconsoled. We who also wake, but turn away cowed, unshamed. We whisper only to each other and the maimed, single, multiple, mass. The killing fields the index of our regress back from Auschwitz-Birkenau. Okay, I'm going to end off with my own favorite poem of mine, which is Kingdom of Rain Part 2. I still dream of one day seeing, sniffing at the ground not far from me, softly grunting, a grizzly bear. Or sat down pulling at a vine of berries, or a sapling, oblivious to me or not caring, or even knowing that I'm there, but with no malevolence, with nothing more than wanting to stare and wonder at it just being bare, and hope it will let me in, not hunter nor prey, somewhere in a North American jungle, with God knows what else around us, but still just me, the trees, the bear. Or sitting by a river on watch with a bald eagle, guarding over time as time turns into dream, the sound only of water over stones, like a chuckle dim and soothing from a favorite uncle now gone, whom you tried too late to love back, and the memory of him fading, remorse too, trickling away like some river where I dream on watch with an eagle, which with a screech wakes itself and me, and maybe the bear is gone, and the eagle flaps away, and time returns, the insoluble matrix. Or maybe somewhere in a forest in India, crawling by some small, slow river, to lie on the bank and watch how, with a muted plash surprising for its size, a lone tiger breaks the algae on the water and swims to the other side. That I'd like to see, and see it rise with its wet fur onto the far bank, turn once, its whiskers dripping, to look at me here outside of history, in dream as in the idyll of this poem, and then slip away, gone through the green reeds. Many animals I dream of seeing, the coelacanth which swims as if it walks, a mustang fast and dark against the swathe of green, some rare bird whose name I still must learn, a fox, a hedgehog, the astonished rattle, watch them from up close, hold them in my hand, like once a baby octopus at Blombos in a 2-second spell, and it was off. I would want them to know I mean no harm, but seek only these moments from their lives, so I may sometimes become no more human. I'll tell the gecko too, and the salamander. Most of all, I dream of the sun on a rock by the Molenaars up in the Tweeskloof, and on the other side, by some small still curve of the river, where from up a deep ravine forever in shade, a clear trickle runs in cold through fern and fynbos, where in a damp patch next to dark green moss, my father years ago may have pointed at a paw print. I dream of lying in the sun there and watching for that rare leopard to come and drink, to see its paws settle on a stone, to see its shy head lowered between ribs, to see the whole mechanics of leopard in its easy possession of what belongs to it. And all would be that leopard and me, the lap of its tongue, the soothing, chuckling water, and it may stop and raise its head, twitch its ears and squint, then return to drink, taking me in as if I belong, knowing that it's only me, it, the water, the sun, this idyll and the unseen, that this is only dream, and that I seek no deeper meaning, no encounter by which to turn this verse into a dispatch from some other kingdom or the failed settlements of philosophy. Yet I want to let that leopard know that it is part of me, and I am part of it in all the ways that that could mean. Thank you.
Thank you. That was amazing. Thank you so much for that reading. I'm sure everyone enjoyed it. I think lots of
Thanks, Melissa.
clappings in the audience. Beautiful. Are you up for some questions?
I'm happy to respond to questions, yes.
Wonderful. So anyone in the audience who'd like to ask something, you're welcome to raise your hand or type it in the chat or just unmute yourself at some point and hop on. Anyone wants to kick us off with a question? I'll start since other people are thinking. I noticed a lot of your poems have a lot of like storytelling, especially the observatory and those kind of poems. Is that something you try and focus on in your work? Does it come naturally to you that it's a storytelling form almost?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it comes naturally. I think I don't strain towards the storytelling aspect of poetry writing. I don't strain to have a narrative. It is just something that, yeah, that comes, I guess. I think I'm also, I like to think of myself as a frustrated filmmaker. And I think that plays a huge part in the, you know, in a kind of slowing down of the eye, you know, and I think that introduces the narrative. That makes it easier to tell a story.
Yeah, writing like a camera.
Mm-hmm.
Something I can see. Thank you. That was Jacques has got a question.
Rustum, that was a fabulous reading. Thank you. So my question, no, you're welcome. So my question is about something that I pick up, and I'm going to struggle to put it into words, but it's something I picked up maybe most strongly in your poem for Sean, but it's something to do with the tension that you speak about and that I feel when you express feeling in the poems, as if there's something that wants to, obviously one wants to avoid sentimentality, but also you want to speak of feelings. And then when that tension is released, something very, to me, very beautiful and lyrical happens. I don't know if you want to say something about that tension, or is it the sort of thing that you just shrug your shoulders and say yes to?
Well, thank you. It's interesting that you say that, because I am often worried that the poems are simply just sentimental, you know, and I myself can never judge where that difference between, I don't know, I mean, you know, but I'm glad that you pick up some of the emotions, and I'm glad that you don't feel that it's sentimental, you know, because that's always a fear of mine, you know, when I'm engaging with my own emotions regarding, you know, a situation or a particular dramatic sequence or whatever, history, whatever. I'm always worried that it's either overwrought or, I mean, I work hard to kind of keep it in check, but I'm always worried that it will come across as either overwrought or sentimental.
When you have Yeats there before you, you know, and you more or less quote him there, saying, you know, that the things hurt us into poetry. And yeah, I feel that, and I feel it in the poems. And
Okay, no, it's great to hear that comment. It is.
a lot of Afrikaans, there's a whole world of experience in those Afrikaans words. Did you speak a lot of Afrikaans growing up?
I went to an Afrikaans medium school. I mean, you know, so my schooling happened in Afrikaans.
Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm bilingual in English and Afrikaans.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, then I go to UCT and I get alienated, from Afrikaans, etc. So that poem is really about a kind of return of the repressed, in a way, if you want it,
Yes.
the Afrikaans that has been suppressed, returns.
Yes. It's a beautiful poem.
Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to ask?
Thanks, Melissa.
Jeff, would you like to ask something? I see you unmuted.
Yeah, thank you. Talking about, the issue of tension, the dangers of sentimentality and so on, it made me think along the lines of uniqueness. In that last poem you read, where there's a kind of concern to get the bareness of bear, the tigerness of tiger, and so on, that really one of the real contributions, for me anyway, that you make in your poems is to somehow define the Rustumness of Rustum. There's a kind of way in which that sort of desire for singularity, which is a very difficult thing to actually achieve, is often achieved by you, and I thank you for it.
Thanks, Jeff. That's another great compliment. Thanks. I mean, that, I don't know. I mean, I can't say that is something that I work towards. I mean, it's not a conscious thing in a way, it's not a deliberate, I don't know. It's, yeah,
maybe
I don't know.
Maybe it's a byproduct that I've picked up on, Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Any other comments or questions? Ed.
Hey, Melissa.
Hey.
Hey. Rustum, thank you so much for that reading. I always get a lot out of your poems. I'm always struck by how far-reaching and how far-seeing the work is. And yeah, so really just an appreciation and yeah, beautifully sustained and layered. Thank you. I just wanted to ask regarding other poets, are there poets that you find yourself going back to, and South African poets that you particularly like? Sorry, I don't know if this is a...
No, it's not I don't want to embarrass Calvin. I see he's here, but I mean, Calvin's poetry was one of the things that I think set me, made me change when I was a very young aspiring poet. It was especially the blood of our silence and projections in the past tense, his first 2 volumes, that kind of gave me insights into how to make it work. I mean, I can't explain that otherwise. But it had to do with a kind of, I mean, relative to a lot of the South African poetry I was reading in the 80s, it had to do with a kind of, I mean, it's not distance, but it's a kind of angle of looking at something, you know, I guess that opens up the tension, you know, in the language doing the describing, but also keeping an emotional element of the poetry in check in a way, you know. So Calvin's been a model for me to a large extent, and I mean, I can trace it back to particular poems that I wrote in the early to mid 90s as well. And then you know, Derek Walcott is another poet that I read constantly over and over.
Okay.
You know, especially for that powerful emotive quality to the poetry.
Thank you. No, I hear you. That makes a lot of sense.
Thank you for that excellent question. Anybody else who'd like to hop on with a question or comment? Welcome to unmute yourself if you don't want to raise your hand or know how to raise your hand, or if you want to type a question in the chat. You've got a whole bunch of compliments in the chat there at the moment.
Thank you, everybody.
If not, then I guess we wrap up this section of the evening. Thank you so much, Rustum, for the incredible reading.
You're welcome.
For
You're
your
welcome.
insightful answers.
Thank you for the invitation as well. You know, I see people are asking me about the next volume, etc. I mean, it's all on scraps of paper. I mean, my stuff, it's all on scraps of paper. It's, you know, I know it's slow in coming, but thank you for inviting me to read, even if I don't have spanking new material, etc., etc. I appreciate it very much.